Darth, I would say the same thing. He'll just try to dodge and evade, look for the exit.
Yeah. Well, this is what they do. Okay.
Can I just say, I agree with everything that Darth just said, and in general, I've been waiting just only to say that as an atheist, I think this is I love it when I can agree with people I don't generally agree with, and of course the title of this thing, how does an atheist recognize not design in a not designed world? Well, you can't recognize I'm always astonished at my fellow atheists who will say, how can anybody look at the world, right, and see God in it? And I look at the world and say, well, Jesus, I think if you just looked at the world with ignorance and saw how incredibly designed it looks, you'd say, wow, God would seem like a really likely thing. I think that completely follows.
Yeah.
So,
John,
in
can
a
you get
nutshell,
closer? John, can you get closer to your microphone, please?
okay, sorry, I got my AirPods on. Does it help when I do this?
Oh, you Apple AirPods? Well, then all sins are forgiven, sir.
No, but I just wanted to say that I mean you can't recognize not design. That's obvious. So I just pretty much leave it there. I don't know.
Can you expand on that? You can't recognize not design.
Well, I mean, first of all, I guess I look at the world, and from my perspective, I mean, my belief is that it is designed, or it's just not designed by God. Right?
Well, then what?
That's my position.
Okay, so what is the origin point that you say that the design emanates from?
Well, that's a harder question, and I'm not, I don't know how to go there. I don't know where things began. All I can do is kind of look at the world as it is and say, for the most part, whatever the origin was, that's a huge question. I don't posit no hypotheses in that regard. But it got to where it is. It can have gotten to where it is the way science says it did, by evolution.
Say that again?
It can have gotten to where it is from the beginning, whatever happened at the beginning, primarily. Do
you mean cosmic evolution?
Cosmic evolution, biological evolution, natural evolution.
Okay, so why would you believe? On what grounds would you have to believe anything is, can be, or cannot be? What would be your fundamental grounds to believe that?
Yeah. So here's the other thing: I really have no interest in philosophical, logical games or anything like that. I'll answer a very specific question.
That's not a game. That's a legitimate
Well,
question.
okay. So ask a question. Ask a question that an ordinary person would understand.
Okay. I mean, you may not like the particular way it was wording, and I can work on that. But that's not a game. Okay. So if you think that the world is not the product of the mind of God, then you're going to be in a situation where you don't have any identifiable, defensible point of origin. But then you want to turn around and invoke certain states of affairs as meaningful and intelligible. Well, what would be the origin point that would make them meaningful and intelligible?
I just don't. I can't even parse a question like that.
Well, okay. So in order to understand the question, let me juxtapose it to the Christian worldview, because I only argue for the Christian worldview. In the Christian worldview, whatever is, can be, or cannot be is by virtue of originating by the mind, the purpose, and the plan of God. So both the actuality and the intelligibility of any state of affairs originates and is sustained by the mind and the purpose and the plan of God. Being that you're an atheist, then, you're then going to invoke certain states of affairs as actual and intelligible. What I want to know,
Darth, I can't go here. Really seriously.
Wait a minute, dude. You're a retired professor of physics, and you can't follow what I'm saying?
It's not that I can't follow in some sense what you're saying.
Do you have a PhD in physics?
He's a scientist.
Do you have a PhD in physics?
Yes, I do.
Okay, then you should be able to follow along what I'm saying. And if there is a particular segment of what I'm saying that is not clear to you, I am more than willing for you to say, stop, can you clarify?
Okay.
But you are smart enough and you're educated enough to follow along with much of what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think I'm not. I really do.
No,
I'm
no,
not.
that you know what? That's hot garbage. You have a PhD in physics, right?
Yep.
There's no reason why you can't follow along, and anything that you don't understand, you can say, "Can you explain that to me?"
Okay, I will, but I think it's going to make you mad, Darth, because there's just about everything you say I don't understand. I mean, it just.
Okay,
I mean,
you
just
stop
stop.
me at any point. You
Stop.
stop me.
Stop. When you the problem is that when you talk, you start. I've heard these. You know, everything that can be could be. I've heard you a lot more than you've heard me, so I know your spiel, and it's fine. You know,
Well, that's
I don't.
insulting.
Well, okay. Well, whatever. I don't mean it to be insulting. I'm just saying that it's a spiel, and I've heard it many, many times.
What
And
specifically do you recall that is spiel?
what do I recall? Sorry.
Yeah, what anything specifically that you recall that you've heard me say that you will reckon as spiel?
Well, there is no God because there's a spiel.
Why is that? Why is that question spiel?
Well, I mean, what I mean by spiel, maybe I have to say that. I mean, what I mean, all I mean by spiel is you have certain things that you say over and over and over, and I've heard them many times. That's what I
And why
mean
is
by
that a
your
problem?
spiel.
Why is that a problem?
It's not a problem. I'm
Well,
just
but you
telling you.
see,
I've
yeah,
heard.
but spiel, but come on. How old are you?
I'm 71.
Okay, so you're older than I am. You and I both know. Okay, I'm 62, right? You and I both know that spiel isn't just a recurrent thoughts and statements that somebody makes. Spiel
Well,
is a
look, I don't.
pejorative. Spiel
Look.
is a pejorative, derogatory characterization meant to
Okay,
demean the
I'm
content
sorry.
of what somebody's saying. Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry if I didn't mean it to be
No,
derogatory.
no, no. That's
All I
okay.
meant by it.
If you want, if you want to criticize the content of what I say, go for it. I'll listen to it. Right. So, but if you're gonna downgrade what I repeatedly say, fine. Then make a case for it. Okay. So I say God doesn't exist because why is that a problematic question?
Well, it's not a problematic question. I'm just saying that you asked me for an example of spiel, and I gave it because what I meant by spiel
Okay.
were things that you say all the time. I've heard a
Okay.
lot of things that you say all the time.
Okay. So let's get down to brass tacks. You're an atheist. Tell us why.
I'm an atheist because I don't believe that God exists, not because I know that God doesn't exist. Now, I
Okay.
don't
Well,
know, where you want to go.
yeah, that doesn't answer the question.
Yeah.
We already
Why
we
don't
already
I
know
believe?
we already know that you don't
Okay.
believe in God. The
Yeah.
question is, when you don't believe in God, you don't have a mental vacuum. So you will then consequently believe in the not God world. So why do you believe in the not God world?
Well, I just believe it's more likely that I don't see anything that convinces me that there's a God or that there's a
Okay.
need for a God. And furthermore, I guess I would go on to say that um, uh, when I say a God, and I think you mean this too, I mean a personal God, one that will bend the laws of physics to make things happen that wouldn't otherwise happen in response to reactions that God may have about the world or in response to prayer or other things and the things like that. And a personal God, right?
Okay.
Not
So
Einstein's God.
so Einstein God is more in the realm of pantheism, which is a whole nother issue. Okay, what we're talking about is the area of atheism that denies the creator-creature distinction. Okay, now I'm sure you've heard me use that spiel before, the creator-creature distinction. Okay, so you 1 minute you represent. But by the way, my questions may be strong and aggressive towards you, but don't let that lead you to believe that I don't like you. Okay, because so far, even though I disagree with you on some things, I think that you are responding in a mature and intelligent fashion, which I appreciate. We don't commonly get this kind of contact, right? So You go from saying you don't believe there's a God to then you're just saying you're not convinced. Well, which is it? Do you affirm and believe God does not exist, or do you claim to suspend judgment as to the existence and non-existence of God?
Well, okay, so I don't believe God exists. I do not affirm that God does not exist.
That's a distinction without a difference.
Well, okay, I think it matters. But
No, to believe something is tantamount to the affirmation of it.
well, I don't believe that, so I disagree with you.
Of course it is. If I tell you, I believe there's gold on Mars, it means that I think that it is the case that there's gold on Mars.
Of course, but it doesn't mean that there's gold on Mars.
That's a separate issue.
Oh, okay. Well, if that's then maybe
I can affirm.
maybe I don't. Maybe I don't understand what you mean by affirm. I guess maybe that's.
I can affirm that there's marshmallows on Mars. It doesn't mean there are.
Okay, I thought affirming meant being able to prove that there are.
Okay.
That's
when we believe something, we are saying that we think that it is the case. It is a form
right.
of saying that something is true.
Fair enough. I have a different definition for affirm, but
Okay.
with your
so
definition, I affirm it.
Okay, so you believe that God does not exist.
Right.
All right. So if we believe God does exist or God does not exist, these are both universal declarations. So how did you come to the conclusion that God does not exist?
Well, I haven't come to the conclusion. I don't believe that God exists.
All right. Give me a second. I got to put my other headset in. My battery went out on my AirPod. Okay. Hold on. Let's see if it's working. It's connected now. Sorry about that. Okay. So do you have a rational basis for your belief that God does not exist?
I think so.
Okay. What is it?
Well, it basically starts and ends with the fact that I don't see the need for God, and I certainly don't see I think evidence. I don't want to go with evidence because as I kind of just finished saying, I think there's plenty of evidence for God, right? I just don't interpret that evidence as
Okay.
proving certainly that God exists, and I don't think God exists because I don't see the need for God. I think that the natural world explains all of the things that need to be explained.
Okay. Well, we have two separate issues here. Okay. When you say God is not necessary, that is the equivalent of saying God doesn't exist, because God, by definition, would be the necessary precondition of all things that are not Himself. So when you say God is not needed, that's just a sideway expression to say God doesn't exist. Okay.
Well, I see what you're saying, and I will concede with you that it. Well, so what I wanted to say is, well, sorry, let me gather my thoughts. When you saying that when I say that I don't see the need for God, what I mean by that is just that I don't see the need for God.
Okay. So what you're saying then is that naturalism is invoked to be true solely on the grounds that those who invoke God are unconvincing. Is that your position?
I'm not going to go to any appeal to ignorance thing, you know. Not
Well,
going to take me there.
That's what your position is.
No, I suppose no, you're right.
Naturalism is an array of materialistic particulars as a set, all of which exist with independence of the necessity of God. Okay? So what you're saying is the not God world is true, which is the same thing as okay. Sir, if you believe God does not exist, that is the same thing as affirming the not God world.
Well, okay, that using your definition of affirming, not mine.
Are we really going to quibble about
Really?
affirming? Really?
Apparently, I mean,
I
I
mean,
think my
I think you're
definition
splitting
is.
hairs. To
I
affirm
think
is to state that
I
something is the
think.
case.
Well,
I
here's what I think. Stop. Here's what I think is happening here, Darth. You're trying to get me to buy into your definition of affirming, which is not my definition, and then you're
What's
trying
your
to make it
definition of
stronger
affirm?
than it is.
Affirming something is saying that something is a case. The Eiffel Tower stands in Paris. Did I affirm that the Eiffel Tower is in Paris?
Um, so by your definition, yes, you did. By my definition, I would say no, you didn't.
What? Okay, sir. What does it mean to affirm something?
Well, affirming. Oh, okay. Uh, you got me here. I To affirm something can mean, and I think does in your definition always, but I guess not in mine always, means to um, means to say that means to say that it's true, right?
Mm-hmm.
So okay, fair enough. So that's right. When you say that the Eiffel Tower stands in Paris, yes, you have affirmed that it stands in Paris. That's right. You haven't proven that it stands in Paris. You have affirmed that it stands in Paris.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. You affirm the not God world, right?
Um, yeah. No, I guess I wouldn't. Yeah. Well, so I say, well,
So do you
I
affirm the
believe
God
the not.
world?
I believe
Well,
the not.
that's a
I
distinction
believe that
without
it
a
is
difference. That's a distinction without a difference.
right. But I just want to be clear that
Okay, you
I
believe the
accept the
not God world is true.
possibility of God. I
No,
accept the
sir. No, no,
possibility of God.
no, sir. You're making a mistake here. Okay, you
Well,
have.
no, I'm not. I mean, I'm just telling you, I do
Okay,
accept the possibility that God
okay. Here's the
exists.
here's the problem with that. Okay,
Well,
God okay, a God that when you say it's possible that God exists, either you believe that God is, or you choose not to believe that. Do you think that it is philosophically and logically possible to be truly neutral toward the position of God?
well, I don't. What do you? So be clear to me about what you mean by being neutral.
That you neither affirm nor deny that it is the case, that you suspend judgment.
Okay. I see how you. This is very clever. I get it.
Wow.
I really do. I
What do you
totally
mean
get it.
by clever? I'm trying to be
Well, it's clever
precise.
because you're using two definitions of affirm. Your definition and mine once again.
How am I using two definitions of affirm?
Well, okay, say it again. So give me your argument again.
Affirm is to invoke that something is true, that it's the
No,
case.
give me the argument you were just starting to make there.
About what? I wasn't making an
I can't
argument. I was
even
asking a
really
question.
remember now.
What you seem to be expressing what a lot of atheists do. You will invoke classical atheism, but then you'll turn around and use language as though you are neutral, or you say you're unconvinced, right? When you say
I
that
Let
it's
me just
listen. All
stop
right, go
stop.
ahead. Go ahead.
Let me put my position my position very clear. I do not believe that God exists. I do not know that God does not exist.
That's fine.
That's my
Hmm.
position. And
Okay.
if you're going to say that's illogical, that's not my problem.
Okay. So what I'm dealing with when it comes to belief and knowledge, I think the distinction between knowledge and belief is not really important. Okay. It's
Well, I
just a
think I
matter of
see that you don't. Yeah.
okay. So it's just a matter of emphasis because knowledge is a subset of belief, right? Whether you call your mental state knowing or believing to me is not it's not important to me, okay? You believe that God does not exist. Now, if when you say it's possible that God exists, you have an inconsistency in your own reasoning because your position, your mental state already rules
Stop.
out the existence
Stop,
of
No.
Darth.
God. Yeah,
That's No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's this simple. Anybody can understand what I'm about to say here, and it encapsulates everything I believe, you know, with respect to the existence of God. I do not believe that God exists. I do not say that God does not exist.
That's a distinction without a difference.
Well, that is for you, but it's not for
No,
me.
sir,
And
sir, sir.
and
To
no,
say
I'm
to
sorry,
say I
Darth.
believe to say I believe X is the same thing as to say that X is true.
And that is the basis of your spiel. That
That's
is
not
the
spiel.
basis of
That is a
that's spiel,
legitimate.
Darth.
That
I'm
is a
sorry.
That's a legitimate delineation that I have just made. Okay.
Well, I'm
To
just gonna
say,
say
look,
I'm
look.
just
Oh,
gonna
listen.
say
What
it
is the
one more
difference?
time.
What is the
I'm
difference
just
if I say to you, I believe there's a deer in my backyard right now, versus I say to you, it is the case there's a deer in my backyard. Is there a substantive difference?
yeah, but see
What's the
this is
difference?
this is really this is such I've got such great insight here. I've
Okay.
never really quite put
Can you
this
answer that
together
question,
before.
please, instead of dodging?
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, ask it again. I'm sorry.
I said, what is the substantive difference between me saying, I believe, if you said to me right now, if you say, Darth, what's in your backyard? And if I were to say, I believe there's a deer in my backyard, what would be the substantive difference between that statement and me saying, well, it's true, there's a deer in my backyard? What's the
Well,
difference?
it was because the first one you might just be making something up, right? You might just say, "Well, I really
Well, then
believe
I
there's
wouldn't
a
believe it
deer."
then. Then
Why
that would be
wouldn't
a
you? No,
lie. Well, see,
no, but look,
what you're doing is you're
no,
changing the
look, stop,
parameters.
Darth,
No, you
stop,
stop. You
Darth.
are being rude right now. You are
No,
changing the
I'm just
parameters.
Stop,
no.
Johnny.
The
No,
problem
listen.
is the problem is
John,
I have
you
your
are. Hey,
number,
John. Hey,
Darth.
John. Hey, John. You can try to poison the well, but that's not going to work. You just changed the parameters of what I said in order to get to evade the question. I said,
No,
"What is if I say to you, I believe there's a deer in the backyard," that statement, we're presuming that I'm being truthful. Okay.
no, oh well, that's you didn't say that before.
Okay, really? Are you going
I
to play
wasn't
this little
Wow.
presuming that
childish?
you were.
Really? Are you
All
going
I
to play
knew,
this little
Shut
stop.
game?
up,
You
Johnny.
have a
All I
PhD in
knew,
physics and you're going to
Darth,
play this game?
Darth. Here you go.
You're
This is
doing
what you
spiel right
do,
now.
Darth.
Okay,
One
I
thing.
think we might want to move on. I think this conversation has
Yeah, I
gone
think
on
I'm
pretty
getting
long,
moved to the
and I
Yeah,
audience.
think
I
Yeah,
mean,
I
this
Jacob.
see
is,
how this.
yeah,
Well, I
yeah.
do see another hand raised, so Jacob has
Yeah,
his hand
okay.
raised.
Yeah,
So
okay. So I think I agree with you, Matt. I don't think we're
that's
getting
not
anywhere
going
with John.
over.
I don't
Yeah.
listen.
Bye, bye,
I
Darth.
don't. Okay, bye,
Wow,
John.
what
I
a
I
don't.
know. I'm getting
well,
moved to the audience.
John, that was
Yeah.
my whole.
That
That's my whole
Hold
plan.
on a
I
second.
wanted to bring one
Let me
person
just
at a
explain one
time
more
up.
thing.
I just move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
I would.
Yeah,
And
John.
Darth is
John. It's
tired
not
of
that I
me because
dislike
he's
you.
losing his argument, and
No,
No,
now
you
no,
he's
just
no.
gonna
don't.
move
Wow,
me to the audience.
wow, wow.
Okay.
You blow my mind of what
He
dishonesty
is
you're
just.
spewing now, having an academic PhD degree, and what you're doing is you're splitting hairs. When I ask you a question,
Can we just
you're
have
changing.
one
Okay,
more
move
Yeah.
Yeah.
on.
Okay. Well,
one
John,
Get
more
him out of here. Wow,
he was trying to
one
wow.
more
explain his position, but we're going to bring Jacob up. Maybe sometime, John,
Look,
you can come
one
back
can
more
I
when I
say
open a
something
portion.
room.
really?
Yeah, yeah. You can come back some other time when you want to be
Yeah, can
truthful.
I say something really quick, Darth and Matt?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to let you know about John. Like, watch out when he brings up science, because there's one time he would say, "Oh, like if there's how should I say it? If there's a issue within science, he'll be like, oh, how is it solved? Is the issue is like if there's an issue in science, and that's how they solve it. The issue is, So I dealt with him before.
Well, I
So,
don't dislike John, but
yeah,
he was getting irritated toward the end because he was pulling the
yeah.
classic tactic of splitting hairs and simply changing the parameters of what I'm saying. So if I said to him, I believe there's a deer in my backyard versus I say it is the case that there's a deer in my backyard, the question presupposes, for the sake of discussion, that I'm being truthful. But because he didn't want to answer the question,
Nope.
because I was showing that to say I believe X versus it is the case of X, there's no substantive difference between both articulations. So rather than face the fact that there's no substantive difference, he wants to change the parameter saying, oh, well, you could be lying. I mean, this is a little game that people play when they want to get out of the conversation. And then he said that he was refuting my argument? I hadn't even begun to make an argument.
Yeah,
What we're doing was I was asking him a line of questions about his beliefs, and he was playing the typical atheist game of muddying the waters, splitting hairs, playing ridiculous games over definitions in order to stalemate the progression of the conversation. And you know what's really embarrassing about that is this guy's a retired academic. He has a PhD in physics. We'll take him at his word that these are his credentials. And these are the little games he's playing. This is what I expect from 15-year-olds on Clubhouse.
Yeah, and Darth apparently a while back ago, Tom Locke and me was in a room with him, and he would talk about science, and then we question him about science, and science apparently solves everything when it doesn't, and then when we challenge, he just be like, "Oh, just the
Wait, well,
issues
hold
with
on a second. Hold on a second. He made a claim. What claim did he make about science?
about like science, how should I say, science, like, because we were talking about God and like science like solves like everything, and I pointed out like this issue within
Are
like
you saying that he was communicating that science can explain everything?
yeah, he was
That
communicating. Yeah,
is appalling for somebody who has a PhD in physics. He knows better than this. There's a whole list, a laundry list of things that science cannot account for by empirical endeavors. He knows this as having a
yeah,
PhD in science. So when he
yeah,
says that science can explain everything,
yeah,
he's not speaking in terms of his academic achievement. This has nothing to do with having a PhD in physics, because he
yeah,
knows science itself cannot account for the fundamental pillars of science. For example, science cannot rationally justify the causal principle. Science cannot justify identity over time. Science has to presuppose it. Science cannot ground or establish the fundamental laws of logic. Science cannot ground the regularity or uniformity of nature. It must presume it in order to engage in scientific thinking and scientific endeavor. So if he was
yeah,
communicating, if you're accurate, that he says science can explain everything, then
yeah. It was
he knows he's being disingenuous. Having a PhD in physics, he knows that there are fundamental pillars
yeah.
in the parameters of existence that science itself cannot account for.
It can't because I challenged him, Darth, and he just went to, oh, it's this or this. I don't know how he would it, but it's like it involves it. We don't need
Can
like
science demonstrate there are other minds? No, it can't. Can
yeah,
science demonstrate aesthetic truths? No, it can't. Can science ground and establish ethical imperatives or ethical truths? No, it can't. So
the
this
science.
idea that science can explain everything is poppycock.
Yeah, he just dodged the question when I challenged him. He just would say, "Oh, this issue," but I paraphrase it, or just like
All right.
I
So
don't.
I'll say one more thing, and we'll move
Yeah,
on.
so,
I really had hopes that we could have a good conversation, being that he's an educated man, he's
yeah, it
intelligent,
was
but I think that he was using his intellectual acumen to just simply stalemate the conversation,
yeah,
by splitting hairs, arguing over the word affirm. Really? Really?
yeah. It's like
Welcome to the
mental
room,
state.
Jacob. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Hey,
Hello.
Darth.
Yeah, can
Can
I?
I just
Hello.
quickly add something?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about the I believe there's a deer in my backyard and there's a deer in my backyard. Couldn't the substantive difference just be the level of confidence in that statement?
No, because if I say there's a deer in my backyard, would I say that if I didn't believe it?
Yeah, but I mean, when left they're not sure
It's
sometimes.
inherent. If I say to you there's a deer in my backyard, it's implicit that I believe it.
Well, yeah, necessarily if you're claiming that there's a deer in your backyard,
There are
necessarily you believe it, but
okay,
if
okay.
you're claiming to have this attitude, propositional attitude, and you could be wrong, you're not sure, then one often says, "I believe there's a deer in my backyard."
That's a separate issue. one's certitude or level of certitude is a slightly different issue than the propositional content that is expressed. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, like
Right.
Yeah,
distinction
I get
of
what you're saying.
difference. It's kind of
And
like
a lot of times, unbelievers will try to conflate the issue of bringing in certitude when it comes to belief. Okay, it's really the issue of certitude is not really important in most conversations, right?
yeah. That he reminds
So
me of
this guy was very uncomfortable. Notice he said, "Yeah, Darth, I'm familiar with your spiel." Okay, so he's being
yeah. He
pejorative.
just
Okay, which is fine. I'm a big boy. I thick skin, but you see, he's familiar with my line of questions, so he knew what was
oh yeah.
coming. So rather than straightforwardly answer my spiel, he decided to stalemate the interaction by splitting hairs over words like affirm and believe. Okay? He purposely was
He's doing
scuttling the conversation because he didn't really want to defend his atheism.
yeah. That would
That's what it was all
Darth.
about.
I would say the same thing. He'll just try to dodge and evade, look for the exit.
Yeah. Well,
He'll
this
be
is what they do. Okay.
Catholic. Sorry, Catholic. Cat. How you say again, man? It's
Catholicism. I'm sorry,
oh my
Catholicism.
Catholicism.
Catholicism.